Hey, that's pretty good.
The LA Times said that their reporter did not submit any questions in advance of yesterday's press conference. So to the people who saw that pocket card, can you explain how that ended up there and why the president needed something like that?
Here we go.
So just to step back, and I'm actually glad you asked that question. Clearly, I would let the reporter for Los Angeles Times speak for herself. It is entirely normal for a president to be briefed on reporters who will be asking questions at a press conference and issues that we expect they might ask about. It is not surprising that yesterday we would anticipate questions that he did receive, right, on the visit with the South Korean president, as the South Korean president was standing to his right, or about 2024. That was completely expected, or about the debt ceiling, which he took questions at the end, shouted questions at the end, and of course we would note those issues to him. Those issues to him will likely come up. And let's not forget, we do these briefings every day, and a lot of the questions that you all tell me, that's how we brief him as well. You all ask me, that's how we brief him as well. So look, we do not have specific questions in advance. That's not something that we do. And in fact, I would point out the questions that was asked was different than what was on the card that you all saw. And look, again, we have these press conferences. The president takes your questions. Our job is to get a sense of what you all want to ask him. That is our job here, to get a sense of what's the news of the day, the topics you all are interested to ask of him, and so that we are all, not just him, we are all prepared to take that seriously and to take that in a way that is going to be reported from our point of view, because we know that you all are reporting out to the American people and want to make sure you get our point of view of how we see these different issues that I even just laid out, whether it's 2024, whether it's what has been discussed, or the agenda with the president of South Korea. Again, we take this very seriously, and we want to make sure that we're providing information that's helpful to you and the American people.
How are the reporters decided?
Here we go.
So the way that we have moved forward with this type of process is that we reach out to a number of reporters who we know are going to be at the press conference, and that's what we did yesterday. And also we try to be really mindful on who has not gotten a question in a while. And so, as you know, we could only pick 2 reporters yesterday, so that limits our ability on how many reporters we can call on. Mary's not here, but I can say one of the reasons that we picked Mary is because she was just named chief White House correspondent for ABC and had not gotten a question in some time. And we picked the Los Angeles Times, which has not gotten a question in some time. And I want to add that the fact that California has the largest Korean American population in any state in the country, and LA has the biggest population of any city in America, and LAT is the biggest daily paper serving that population. So we are mindful on who we pick and who we want to communicate out to.
Wait for it.
And so that's how we move forward with Mary and Courtney. We thought that is pretty reasonable, wanting to, as we have the South Korean president with us during this press conference, because we wanted to also communicate with the Korean American. So that's usually how we move this process forward.
I'm sorry.
Is it your contention, Karine?
I'm not taking call.
That the question
Jackie's
that was
not done.
on the so-called cheat sheet was
Jackie,
not similar to the question that was asked at the press conference.
Your colleague is not done. Go ahead.
It's a very reasonable question.
No, but I hear you. Can you wait your turn? Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I really do. Go ahead.
It's over.
Go ahead, John.
And just to be clear, to people, skeptics who saw the card and saw the question number 1 and might think that that is a signal that it was pre-organized. Did the president have other questions that he was prepared, had similar talking points in case he was asked something on other topics in that same...
Now I feel better.
Jackie, I'm going to be, as someone who is part of his of the prep briefing with the president for these press conferences, as his press secretary, we talk about an array of topics that could potentially come up, and that's what we do. Just at the end, there were shouted questions, and he took those shouted questions. But we also had a sense that, hey, you know, you might get something on a debt ceiling, which makes a lot of sense, which is one of the news of the day. So we cover an array of topics. It's not just the two Americans who ask questions. It was also the two South Korean reporters who asked questions. So we do our best to make sure that the president is ready to communicate with all of you and the American people. So yeah, we covered an array of issues, but of course there are probably the top 5 topics, hot items that you all are interested in, and so that's kind of how we move forward.
And the last one, just on that shouted question that he did respond to on the debt ceiling, having heard your response to the questions that were answered already here today, you've had now Democrats saying that Republicans have, you know, come to the table, might not like what they came to the table with, but it's time for the dialogue. You know, how long can this posture from the president last before it feels like intellectually dishonest to say, you know, they're holding the economy hostage and not raising the debt ceiling when they did pass a bill to raise the debt ceiling, and the argument's really about the budget cuts, the spending cuts, and not about whether or not the debt ceiling gets raised.
Nice.
So I have to say, Jackie, I disagree with the intellectually dishonest. That is certainly not how we see ourselves here, because we've been very, very clear that they need to deal with the debt ceiling. They need to not default. It is a constitutional duty. And it's, again, this is not to us. This is to the American people.
Oh, really?
If you think...
Without conditions, like unless it's a clean bill, they won't.
I mean,
touch.
I've been very clear. Without conditions, we will not negotiate. There's nothing new there. What you're seeing that the House Republicans have done is they said that unless the president, and I've said this before, this is nothing new that I'm about to say, unless the president and the Senate agree to an extreme MAGA wish list, slashing education, veterans health care, Meals on Wheels, taking away health care from millions of Americans, and sending manufacturing jobs overseas, they're going to default and crash the economy.
Seriously?
We've said this over and over and over again and been very clear. The president does not agree with this bill. He believes, and we believe, and the American people deserve this, that they need to do their constitutional duty. They need to do this so that they are not holding, not we, they are not holding the economy, our American economy hostage. We cannot be a deadbeat nation. We cannot be.
Now, answer me. Seriously?
It's a clean debt bill.
Look, we've been very clear about this. We've been very, very clear. I appreciate the question. Okay, let me just take a question from the back. Well, I just took a bunch of questions on this. Yeah, you also screamed. I said wait your turn, but now we're running out of time. Go ahead, Ed. Go ahead, Ed.
I wanted to ask you about the Inflation Reduction Act. The Penn-Wharton budget model just came out, which I realize you probably haven't seen, but it released new cost estimates, previously saying that it would cost $385 billion over 10 years. The new estimate, based on implementation details for the climate provision, is now more than $1 trillion over 10 years. Is government spending a concern for this president?
So look, the higher score reflects, and I did see this report, the higher score reflects that the Joint Committee on Taxation assumption that the Inflation Reduction Act will spur more manufacturing projects and more clean energy deployment than when JCT originally scored the bill. That is a good thing. It means more private sector investments, more American manufacturing, more jobs, more secure supply chains, and lower costs for American families thanks to cutting-edge technologies. Even with the new score, the Inflation Reduction Act still reduces the deficit over the long run. As you know, I know you follow this very closely outside of the 10 years, right? Because it looks at it in a decade. The Inflation Reduction Act increasingly reduces the deficit as time passes, including that second decade, as I was just mentioning, and beyond. So moreover, a number of experts have said that the CBO likely underestimated the deficit reduction from the Inflation Reduction Act's crackdown on rich tax cheats. An expert from the Treasury Department, 2 former IRS commissioners, and Treasury secretaries say the law's provision to make the wealthy pay what they already owe will reduce the deficit by more, even hundreds of billions more than CBO estimates.
go.